and welcome to Telewizja Republika. The whole world is watching the situation on the border between Poland and Ukraine. Remember 2 years of Polish support for Ukraine, and remember me warning you that the change in the Polish government will have geopolitical consequences. Well, we've been right, as we've been right on couple of issues that are happening in Poland right now. And no, nothing is changing, even though Polish foreign minister gave a brilliant anti-Russian speech in New York during the UN security meeting, the Security Council meeting. The thing is that the Polish government refuses to talk to Ukraine about the problem with the Ukrainian grain. And it does so because European Union and Germans are really interested in keeping the situation like it is now. The Polish farmers are passing and letting pass the humanitarian help and letting pass the military help to Ukraine, and still have to remember that a couple of months ago, Polish counterintelligence services announced destroying the network of Russian spies. Guess what they were interested in? The routes of support, the humanitarian support, the military transport. And among other things, the Russian spies were ordering graffitis on the streets of Warsaw and other Polish cities that make Poles oppose Ukrainians. Why? Well, because the alliance between Ukraine and Poland poses a real threat to the old idea of cooperation between Berlin and Moscow. You can join us on Rachoń.com, that's our website. You can leave us your email, and we will send you back the reports from the front lines of the war against the West. My name is Rachoń, this is Rachoń, and we roll in. It's Monday, so Joe Lindsley is again on Telewizja Republika. Joe, great to see you again. We've been discussing on this program over and over again the issue of the difficulties regarding the war in Ukraine in your home country, United States. And right now, we are having difficulties, to put it mildly, regarding the Russian attack on Ukraine in my home country, which is Poland. You spent some time on the Ukrainian-Poland border, on the other side, from my perspective, on the Ukrainian side of the border. So I wonder, what's your viewpoint, and what's the viewpoint of people from Ukraine on the crisis that we are facing right now? I will refer to the Polish viewpoint in a second, but I wonder, what are your takeaways from what you see in Ukraine right now?
Hey, Michał, hello from Kharkiv, city 30 miles from Russia. Russia attacked last night, which is pretty normal. You get used to it. Yesterday, I was in Donbass. I was in the city of Kramatorsk, which is really, a frontline city right now. And so being here at the edge gives you a different perspective than we get in foreign capitals, or even that you get in Kyiv or at the border. And I believe, or I see here, that the first thing to realize is that, especially in the past weeks, we've had a series of Russian propaganda punches that end up controlling the narrative. And to the extent that we allow ourselves to follow that narrative, the Russians are in control of all the topics in the media week by week. So lately, for example, it has been these protests at the border between Poland and Ukraine. Allegedly Polish farmers spilling Ukrainian grain. Last week, when the focus should have been, or could easily have been, on the 2 years, three-day attempt to take Ukraine, 2-year anniversary of Ukrainian resistance, but also crucially, the 10-year anniversary of Ukraine's Maidan revolution that started this, the moment when Ukrainians bravely stood up to a tyrannical regime and said, we're not going to be part of that. All of that was eclipsed by the death of Navalny. So Russians very shrewdly got the free world, the Western world, to pay attention to the sad story of one Russian while ignoring the daily heroic resistance of millions of Ukrainians. We also see other key stories that are missed. For example, the fact that yesterday over the weekend you had so many global leaders in Kyiv for that 2-year anniversary, and this is extraordinary. Kyiv is incredibly protected by Western air defense, but the story that's totally missed. 1 year ago, Ukraine was living in the Middle Ages. There was most days, there was many hours with no electricity, no hot water. People were sniffling and coughing, and you had points of invincibility, tents for people to go to get heat and to charge their cell phones. That was the reality here last winter. That is not the case at all this year. So Russia's winter offensive has failed. This must be said very clearly. Their winter offensive last year failed. And then, even though it failed last year and Ukrainians held on, all of the headlines, you look at the most prominent headlines about Russia's war in Ukraine from last summer and last fall, and they were all scaremongering, saying, "Oh, a new winter offensive is coming." And where is it? We've had electricity
you mentioned the death of one of the Russian politicians to be and to be precise, because we have to say loudly, Alexei Navalny, who died or was killed in Russian prison, was supporting the Russian aggression against Ukraine, was claiming that Crimea belongs to Russia, was also one of the political figures who claimed that Russia should be an imperial state, which basically means that the other nations should serve Russian cause or Russian state cause. He never openly criticized the top echelons of FSB itself. He criticized Vladimir Putin. That's true, and he was also one of those who supported the Russian activities in Caucasus. For example, wars against Chechnya. It's very important to claim that, of course, he was killed by the Russian regime, as many other Russian citizens were killed by this criminal regime of Russia. But you didn't mention downing of another so-called Russian AWACS, and those kind of things do not happen very often, and those are the effects of the operations of Ukrainian military. We've discussed the issues of the Black Sea several times. We discussed about sinking the vessels that belong to Black Sea fleet by the Ukrainian naval drones. But all of those things do not change the overall image, and you are referring to controlling of the narrative by the Russian side, that we are facing, in a way, a stalemate, possible peace talks, with Russia controlling still about 20% of the Ukrainian territory. And to me, it looks like the hope of the collective West to make it happen as soon as possible, so that the collective West can return to business as usual. And that's, from my perspective, that's the context of the policies of government of Republic of Poland, which actually announced that they are going to meet the Ukrainian government in 1 month's time, which is not proof that they do want to solve this problem soon.
Yeah, I mean, speaking about 1 month, I mean, every single day is absolutely urgent here, and we see this. I mean, look, as I saw the scenes from Kyiv over the weekend, Kyiv has become Disney World for foreign politicians. If you want to boost in the polls, if you want to look like a hero, you take that overnight train to Kyiv. It's exciting. You're coming to a country at war, and you look like a hero. But that's because Kyiv is well protected. But meanwhile, no one is talking about places like Odessa, places like Kharkiv that refuse to give up. I mean, that's a very reason why I chose to be here for the second anniversary of the full-scale invasion. I chose to be in Kharkiv because to see the resilient spirit of this city, to see if the Russians were going to do anything big, and they didn't. All the foreign intelligence people say, "Oh, don't go there; it's going to be dangerous." And time again, okay, there's a few bombings, but it's nothing unusual. And so these places are holding on. That's the very reason why yesterday I went to Kramatorsk. I mean, you are entering really into the war zone. You go through lots of checkpoints, and you see so many destroyed villages. But at the same time, even amid the barricades, and I was eating Thai food in a barricaded restaurant while there were air raid alerts. as I'm there, I see people from all over the world. I see, as I'm traveling on the highway, military vehicles, civilian vehicles, license plates from Poland, from Sweden, from the UK. You see the actual people who are not talking but doing the work, who are getting supplies to the front, who are evacuating the wounded. And it's this incredible, encouraging spirit. In fact, as a friend here in Kharkiv put it, it's important to go there to the edge to renovate the feeling, not just the feeling of Russian destruction, but most importantly, the feeling of the possibility that this can work. And that is what gets missed in so many of the headlines. So, for example, we heard several weeks ago, remember this was a big story for several days about allegedly Ukraine shot down a Russian plane with Ukrainian POWs. Well, there's no more information about that because, of course, probably the whole thing was made up. But what that served to do was to disguise from the big success. So Ukraine is really doing a lot of great work, shooting down Russian jets and some of Russia's key spy planes. And just in the last about 7 days, Ukrainians have destroyed, and it seems that we can say this very confidently, 10 Russian planes, among them 7 of the Su-34 fighter jets. 10 in 7 days. This is a headline. This is the news. Yeah, of course, there's some people protesting and doing things at the borders, but this is if anyone cares about the metrics of the war, we do see Ukraine having these extraordinary successes, and so these should give encouragement to leaders in the West, but we have to make sure people are aware of it.
Joe, this is actually very interesting because I'm with you on analyzing those issues. We are. On the other hand, we are right after the announcement of Ukraine losing the Battle of Avdiivka. This is one of those battles that took months, actually, as far as I remember. But on the other hand, we are, and we cannot forget it, we are in the third year right now of what was supposed to be a 3-day special military operation. But I wonder, what is your take on the situation on the border on one hand, because on the other hand, and I referred to this in the beginning of our program, we are after, for example, after dismantling by the Polish counterintelligence back in autumn 2023, a big network of Russian spies, and they were caught and just revealed, it was revealed by the Polish counterintelligence that this group of spies who were recruited by the Russian basically the special operations and the people who are working for the Russian intelligence agencies were recruiting people to follow and film the routes of support for Ukraine, the humanitarian convoys, the transportation of the military equipment. They were following the transports of support for Ukraine, and out of nowhere, right now in those days, we are finding the information about the graffiti signs, which was also the way that those people were working and ordering this kind of anti-Ukrainian graffitis in Poland. We see it all around the main highways right now. We see the Ukrainian grain being spilled in the areas where there were no protests of the farmers. What is your assessment of this situation? Because from my perspective, we are having also an active process of Russian influence, not only on Ukraine, but also on the other side of the border.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and it's a very smart campaign because, you know, the Kremlin is very good at propaganda going back to Soviet times, and they know, you know, if they say, oh, Polish farmers, you're going to get a lot of solidarity from like people at CPAC in Washington. And so they know the trigger words, but, you know, it necessarily takes the attention off the successes Ukraine is having and how Ukrainians are holding on. And that's why I was really impressed by and surprised, actually, by the words of your foreign minister, Sikorsky, speaking at the United Nations the other day. He emphasized what Russia has achieved is to remind us, meaning the Poles, why we resisted Soviet domination and what Ukraine is resisting now. They, the Russians, failed to subjugate us then, they'll fail to subjugate Ukraine and us now. And I think maybe, with some of these protests in Poland, they're starting to feel that the Russians, remember, the Russians also want to destroy Poland. But what really impressed me about what Sikorsky said there is because in 2014, I think he was a foreign minister back then at the same time, you could hear there was a video of him telling the leaders of Ukraine's Maidan to calm down, to negotiate with the government, because they're all going to get themselves killed if they insist on too much freedom. And what we celebrated last week was the 10-year anniversary of Ukrainians not listening to those weak voices in the West saying, we insist on our freedom and total freedom. We don't want some partial bread and circus freedom. We want serious freedom where we control our own destiny. We're not controlled by anyone on the outside. And Sikorsky maybe has now learned that by Ukraine's stand for these past 2 years. He said Kyiv is fighting to be independent of everybody, not just Russia, EU, everyone. They want true independence. And that's the spirit I see here every single day in Kharkiv. It's what I see in Donbass, this incredible spirit of independence and of believing that no matter how bleak it is, you just keep going. And that's what we see, Ukrainians chipping away.
Joe, that's actually very interesting. And I think that as you agree, I do agree with the words that were said by Radosław Sikorski during the United Nations Security Council meeting. But the problem is, and that's my assessment of the situation, very similar to your assessment of the policies of Joe Biden's administration, which in terms of the narrative, in terms of the messages that are being sent by the President of the United States and his administration are very positive. However, if you speak about the actions, they are not that effective. I mean, Radosław Sikorski is a foreign minister of the same government that refuses to talk directly to the Ukrainian side for 1 month. They said that they're going to discuss this issue at the end of March, since right now there is a crisis, and this crisis is influencing the mutual relations between Poland and Ukraine. And there is a real problem, the real problem for Polish farmers. There is a real problem on the European market with the policies of EU, with the policies of Germany, with the policies of states that are benefiting from this situation. And this government, the same government of the same foreign minister who refuses to solve this problem, he travels to New York and he delivers very warm and very good speech in terms of what he said. But there are really no actions of his government, of his vice minister of agriculture, who was a couple of months ago screaming to show off to the, F off, I didn't want to say it directly, to citizens, and who was arguing that the previous Polish government made the relations with Russia worse. I mean, we do have people who were responsible for years of reset policies, of building reset policies with Russia, and I do not see actions where I should see them.
Yep.
Because it's the real problem for the farmers who are protesting right now. And they personally say, when we talk to them on the streets, they say that we are helping Ukraine, transferring the goods, transferring the humanitarian aid, transferring the military aid, but we are having problem with our agricultural market, and European Union does nothing about it. That's a problem that people do have in Poland here.
Well, and I think we see this, obviously a difference between the words and the actions. And I see this so often, especially in Europe. European leaders are happy to have conferences, big, fancy conferences about the rebuilding of Ukraine. But what they don't want to do is talk about the actual steps for victory, of defeating the Russians, of killing the enemy, getting the tools needed. Scholz in Germany refuses still, even as of today, to send the Taurus long-range missiles, which, by the way, could give a good deal of protection. Like here in Kharkiv last night, I had bombs falling around me with no notification because the Russians are so close, and Ukrainians have no permission to hit anything on Russian soil, and no ability, thanks to Germany and the U.S. So we see lots of talk about rebuilding in some future day, because they all want control of Ukrainian resources when that future peace comes, but they don't have the courage to deal with what it takes to get there right now. And we see this in the White House. There's a conspiracy theory on the left. Americans love conspiracy theories on the left and the right. And there's a conspiracy theory among diehard proponents of Joe Biden that secretly they're really, because of their rhetoric, that they must be really helping, that secretly they've sent ATACMS and fighter jets here. I'm here at the edge. That's not true. They're not doing it. They want to talk a good game, but they're afraid that if something goes wrong, that they'll be accountable.
We got to go, Joe. Thanks a lot. The only thing that is needed are weapons and full support to kick Russia out of territory of Ukraine, and I think we all agree on that. Well, not all of it, but we both agree on that. Joe Lindsley, thank you very much. See you soon. See you next.
Michal, can I just say, Avivka, not a loss. It kept the Russians occupied. We got to look, I mean, there's always a different perspective on this. So until next time.
See you next week. Ladies and gentlemen, you can join us on rachoń.com. That's our Substack. You can leave us your email, and we will send you back our reports from the front lines of the war against the West. Ciao. Bye-bye.